What if I told you that most anglers that use a bait casting reel make 3 common mistakes that even after years of fishing never get fixed? In this video, I'm gonna share with you what those 3 baitcaster mistakes are and how to fix them today so you can get less backlashes, more casting distance, and of course, catch more fish on your baitcaster. My name's Tyler, and let's talk about it. Another giant, another giant. Look at that, y'all. I can't believe what I just caught. Yes! Well, what's going on, folks, and welcome to TRF. Hey, I'm gonna talk about all 3 of these baitcaster tips, but I'm gonna have one secret tip at the end of the video, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, I wanna remind you guys that Tackle Warehouse is a fantastic place to shop for tackle, and down in the video description of every single one of my videos, I've got the rod, reel, line, and baits that I use, talk about, and catch fish on. And if you can remember every time you shop for tackle, enter the website using those links down in the video description, that would help the TRF channel continue to grow. So let's talk about the first baitcaster mistake, and that is using the wrong casting mechanics. And every fishing rod, especially a baitcaster, is designed to be fully loaded on the cast. This means that when you bring your rod back to make a cast and then go forward, the rod bends just enough with the lure weight to send it straight and far. And that is why every single rod, baitcasting and spinning, has printed on it a lure weight range, because a lure in that range, properly casted, should result in a good load of the rod. Not getting a good load on your rod could be due to one of 2 reasons. First, it could be you have the wrong lure weight, and that is easily changeable. Number 2 is user error, and I think it's mostly user error. And the main user error I see is what I call chopping the rod like you're throwing an axe. Where you bring the rod backwards, cast forward, but you stop right there. Which I don't know if you can see, but resulted in a backlash. And let me shout it loud and clear, do not chop on your casts. The best quarterbacks in football have a beautiful follow through, which leads to a straight, long, spiraling pass. If during the throwing motion their arm gets stopped by a defensive lineman, that chopped arm motion is exactly what you don't want to do in football, in baseball, and of course, not in bass fishing either. Casting needs to resemble a good golf swing. The club comes back, the hips then turn first to let the upper body load, which then loads and brings the club around for a good, long, straight swing. Or if you're in my case, a slice. Now, different lengths, powers, and actions of rods will load up different than one another, and so if you have multiple rods, you're gonna kinda have to learn how to cast each one individually, because they're not all gonna load the same. Now, are you gonna catch me sometimes on camera chopping with my casts? Yes, at this point, it's almost like golf, where you have a bad slice, but I just stick with my slice and I turn my body so it slices into the fairway. The same thing can be said for my casting form. I've kind of reached the point where I have a good feel with my thumb on what the bait casting reel is doing, if it's getting a backlash, if I can cast it even harder. And so you're gonna see me chop sometimes on the channel, but if you are just getting your feet under you in bass fishing, monkey see, monkey don't do when it comes to a lot of my casting patterns, because I've noticed when I do chop, that's when most of my backlashes happen. And when I have a good, round, long loading cast, almost every time it goes exactly where I want it to, and I have 0 backlash. Now, the second baitcaster mistake that I see many anglers make is not having a full spool of line. And 2 things happen simultaneously when you don't fill your spool all the way up. I'm talking fluorocarbon, monofilament, and braided line. The first of those being that your spool has to actually spin faster to release the same amount of line on a cast. Which means if your spool has to spin faster, you've got to cast a whole lot harder. I noticed this big time in a recent uncut video I filmed where I was fishing a frog from the bank. I was casting perfectly and catching fish on a fully spooled 50-pound braid Lew's Mach 2 combo, and then got a horrible backlash and had to put a different reel on my rod. Now that reel, I didn't know until I put it on there, was not full of braid. Obviously I had, snagged a few times and had to retie a bunch, so my spool was getting low. And the first cast I made, I noticed that it was vastly harder to get distance. Now, there is one benefit to having less line on the spool, and that is it's harder to backlash, and when you do, you have less line to pick out of your backlash. But I'm just telling you guys, it's best to have a full spool of line. And if you're unsure on how full is totally full, I will have a picture on the screen here with an arrow showing exactly where your line should go. And like I said, that goes for any type of fishing line on your baitcaster. And the third baitcaster mistake that I see a lot of anglers make is not clearing their spool during fishing, and of course at the end of the day. Throughout the fishing process, you're gonna wind up getting several loops in your spool. Could be on the cast, could be on the retrieve, especially on like top waters and Texas rigs and jigs. You're gonna lift up on your rod and then reel in your slack, which is gonna inevitably reel in some not totally tight line. And when you've got line on your spool that is not tight enough, and you go to cast, especially make a long cast, usually an important cast towards a piece of structure or maybe some fish that are schooling, oftentimes that is when the most frustrating backlashes can happen, and it's because you didn't take the proper measures to understand my spool's kind of feeling a little loose. I'm gonna make what I call a maintenance cast, just a super long far cast, and then either reeling in fast if it's a reaction bait that has pressure, or keeping your fingers here on the line to give it some tension. That way you have a spool of line that is tightly wound on there, ready for the next cast. And especially to end the day, I make a maintenance cast with every single lure on my last cast of the day with that reel, because trust me, you don't want your first cast on the next fishing day to result in a backlash because your line was sitting on top of itself unevenly, because that would be totally preventable. So again, maintenance cast, clearing your spool, whatever you want to call it, is the third baitcaster mistake I see most anglers make. Now, like I told you guys, I have one more bonus secret tip for you guys, and that is you're gonna get backlashes. I know that the point of this video is to help you get less of them, but even myself, a baitcaster user for over a decade, I still get backlashes almost every day I go out in the water. And so if you want to learn the best practices, how to effectively and quickly get a backlash out of your reel, I will leave a video I've made on that in the video description, as well as up here in the corner. Remember to shop for your tackle using the Tackle Warehouse links in the video description. My name's Tyler, and we'll see you guys next time right here on TRF.